Welcome back.
Hello.
This is week 107 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. And the first episode of the week is episode 517, which aired Monday, August 11th, 1986. Now, over the weekend, I posted our 5 episodes from last week, and I noticed how amazing the lighting was on our Wednesday episode when we were on the Friends Experience set. So I think I might have to find out who did the lighting there and see if they can tweak our dining room table setup that we have here.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine what our podcast would be if we had professional lighting and professional performers as well.
We'll hire people to play us. Mm-hmm. Get Nathan Fielder to hire some people for us. We were so excited about the Friends Experience last Wednesday, August 6th, that we completely forgot to read the newspaper. And I find, to my horror, that August 6th, the British actor Timothy Dalton has been named to replace Roger Moore as James Bond in the 25th anniversary film. The other candidate, Pierce Brosnan, was unable to win release from his contract as television's romantic private detective Remington Steele. The series has been renewed by NBC 2 months after it had been cancelled, and filming for the new season has already begun. So that is unfortunate. The Living Daylights will not be starring Pierce Brosnan. Instead, it will be this Timothy Dalton that I've never heard of. Now,
there are people who think that Timothy Dalton actually comes the closest to Ian Fleming's description of Bond in the books.
The photo of him looks a lot closer. Yeah, we'll see how he is acting. I don't know he's going to fight now that the Russians are gone. Now, back to the world of Santa Barbara of 1986. Kelly remembers that Dylan had a gun, but she doesn't remember what happened to it. A police boat comes alongside, and Pearl claims that their engine failed and they drifted into Mexico unintentionally. They all give fake names, except for Owen Cohen, who gives his real name. Sooner or later, Dr. Rawlings shows up, but they've already realized Rawlings is coming, and they have a plan for Owen to stall Rawlings while Kelly and Pearl make their escape. Mm-hmm. But Dr. Rawlings quickly sees through it, and Owen says, well, you can just let me go, but he calls the police to take Owen into custody. And then when we see Kelly and Pearl in the cantina, Kelly's worried about Owen. Pearl says, I don't think that guy was ready for the free world. So this whole time he's been, pushing for Owen's escape, but really he realizes that Owen should still actually be in care. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned when they were first starting this little voyage that I thought that Pearl was, maybe a little unsure of Owen, and I wondered if perhaps Pearl had maybe seen through some of his deception, which I still think is possible, but as you say, it could be that he was already getting a sense that maybe Owen needed a little more help.
Because he did freak out every time they saw a boat, and freaked out when he found out Kelly was a murderer. But I mean, those aren't entirely unreasonable reactions for anyone.
I think I would freak out on that last one.
At the cantina, they pull all the decorative clothing off of the walls in order to make disguises. And Kelly catches a glimpse of Pearl in the mirror as he's trying something on, and she suddenly has a flash and says, Gina! So Kelly now remembers that Gina was there just after Dylan went out the window, and even if she doesn't remember Gina picking up the gun, I think between her and Pearl, they can figure out that Gina is probably the person who has the gun. Keith tells Santana she's to blame for everything that went awry. She should have trusted him. Mm-hmm. And then she says, you better pray I never get out. So it'll be interesting to see Santana's revenge against Keith when she does get out. Mm-hmm. Rosa ends up insulting Keith as well, and then Santana physically attacks Gina. Cruz tells Eden that he remembers when Santana was 16 and hung on his every word, and he would hope she would have a good life. Now he's helped to ruin it. Then they hear the commotion outside from Santana attacking Gina, and they come out, and of course Santana sees Cruz and Eden together and says, "Do I have to be in my grave before you feel relieved of your sense of duty?" Gina pulls Eden aside and says that she was happy she could keep her promise, which seems to throw off Eden a little bit. Gina tries to tie it in with Cruz and Eden should be together, and Eden says she won't discuss Cruz with Gina. So then Gina says, "Well, let's talk about Brandon. Can you get Cece to take him away from this unstable household that she's in? Because, Cruz is going to be too busy working to take care of Brandon when Santana's put away." And Eden says, "Don't you think you should see what happens to Santana first before you start picking the spoils?" Cruz watches Santana being processed, I guess handing over the stuff to be put in an envelope like we always see in fiction. Eden comes into the room because she spots Cruz there, and when Santana sees her, she flings something across the room at her, something heavy that smashes the window, and she attacks Eden physically. So now Gina, Keith, and Eden have been attacked by Santana.
None of this is ultimately going to be good for Santana, I think.
No. Well, Santana adds in "You should have died out there. You've always had everything, but it was never enough. You're just like your father. Just take her. Take her to your bed. She should have died." Keith wanders in and says, "You can't say things like that, especially right here."
And I think it's useful at this point to remember that Gina lost custody of Brandon because she had been high on drugs and he'd crawled out onto the roof and was endangered. But I don't remember Gina actually physically attacking 3 people, and possibly, as far as the court case goes, perhaps trying to run someone over with her car. Although we know she did try and run someone over with her car, but wasn't
Yeah, that's true.
in this context. So I think Santana is getting onto very thin ground.
Yeah, and she's making enemies of everyone. So
Yeah.
I don't know if she will, go to jail and be out of everyone's way, or escape somehow and wreak revenge on everyone. It could go a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I feel like Brandon may end up back with Gina for a while. I think, because unless they can prove Gina spiked the pills. Cruz tells Santana that a doctor's going to run some tests on her, and so I'm thinking then they'll find the drugs in her system. And she asks how long they've been married, so she's kind of been out of it, as we know. Cruz says 5 months,
which really surprised us because it just felt like they'd been married for so long and unhappy for that entire length of time, basically.
And then Santana says, "I feel so free, finally." Now, it seems like unlikely that Santana's going to be attending the reunion, which is the only, sad thing about the timing of this, because, it would be nice to see as many people, from that class and that school in the reunion that we probably won't see again.
Yeah, I was looking forward to some sort of big freak out at the reunion. And as you say, that seems less and less likely.
Unless she escapes custody on the day of the reunion and plans some revenge. Marcello style. Rosa asks Sophia for help. She says Cece can pull strings. Sophia says, well, he couldn't pull enough strings for Kelly. And Rosa says, I've never asked anything in all these years. And then Eden comes in, and Rosa snaps at her. This is a very great to-do for an accident that left you entirely unharmed. As a child, you were always adept at avoiding punishment. I could never turn my back on you. And then Eden tries to protest about she was just trying to help, Cruz. And Rosa says, did Cruz appoint you the watchdog of their marriage? So, this is interesting. Someone had just posted on the Facebook group this week about that altercation, saying that it was never followed up on, that Rosa and Eden never really, had a subsequent discussion about that, which is interesting.
I think, just seeing it in its context today. Now, as you know, I've never really been the hugest fan of Rosa, and I do wonder strategically, she's just asked for help from CC. He's not there, but through Sophia. And then she lashes out at his favorite daughter. It just seems to me strategically maybe not the best move. And I think we see, and you'll probably get into this from Sophia's reaction, that she's a little taken aback by it.
Mm-hmm. Later, Eden and Sophia are talking, and Eden likens her situation to Sophia's and says, when you met Daddy, he was still married to Pamela, separated, but not divorced. And you wouldn't give Daddy back now.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sophia says, it's up to Cruz. And Eden says, wouldn't it be funny if he was waiting for me? Cruz stops by to discuss Brandon with Cece, and Cece is not home. So he leaves, and then Sophia tells Eden, well, Cruz obviously came by to see you because I think he already knew Cece wasn't here. And so she tells Eden to go after Cruz. And Eden shows up at the beach house and kisses Cruz. So I feel like Cruz and Eden are back together from this point on. Santana maybe headed to jail. I don't know if she'll give a divorce. We'll see about what happens there. And yeah, we'll see about what happens with Brandon, because at one point someone does say, well, I think Cruz says, oh, I'm his father, so I will take care of him.
And one thing I was going to mention, I think this was actually from maybe not the episode we're talking about today, but the last one, I can't quite remember. But we did see a scene with Gina and Keith where they were falling into each other's arms, and I think Gina says something, and I'm only paraphrasing, but she was talking about how she and Keith were so much alike and how they don't feel guilty for being the people they are. And sometimes when I see these kind of scenes with Eden, I think she's actually almost a shade of Gina. Like she's kind of comes closer to Gina in some ways than Cruz. But she stays on the right side of the line most of the time. But I kind of see a little bit of that in Eden as well.
Well, that actually reminds me of, it's unrelated, but the judge had asked Eden a couple episodes ago how long she had known Gina, and she says, a couple years, I guess. Mm-hmm. So when Gina was first introduced, she was a friend of Kelly's, but I guess Kelly may have visited, the DeMotts with Cece many times, whereas Eden was in Europe and would maybe never have met Gina before.
Yeah.
So, well, Gina shows up at Keith's place with a bottle of champagne, and Keith says, I hope my punishment would not include putting up with you. If you want to celebrate, come back New Year's Eve. I'll give you a funny hat and something to blow on that goes tweet. And then they have a back and forth, and Keith says, you replaced her pills with something much meaner. And Gina says, I couldn't stand to see her sneeze anymore. And then Keith says that she's going to start going through withdrawals soon. And then Gina says, oh, well, you always struck me as the kind of guy who has to drug women to get them into bed. And you have finally met your match. Stick with me and you'll go places. Keith says, she's got a lot more on the ball than you, even when you're stone cold sober. And then Gina pushes Keith on the couch and says, you probably couldn't handle me anyway. And then he pulls her on top of him, and they laugh, and he kisses her. This could be the start of something big.
I actually really enjoy the Keith and Gina scenes. So, and I think, as I said to you when we were watching this, I would actually love to see a spin-off road trip with these two. Just, driving around and fleecing everyone they meet.
It's, one thought is she just trying to stick close to him because he's the only one who knows that she drugged Santana? That's the only thing. But I think maybe she just has seen, a similar, what do you call it?
A kindred spirit.
Kindred spirit, yeah. And whereas at the start, he seemed to be somewhat neutral to the Capwells, I think he is now on the wrong side of several Capwells at this point. And So they actually have an anti-Capwell thing in common too. Although, as Gina puts it, she's going to be a millionaire very soon. So we will see how her plan to blackmail Cece with Kelly's tape goes, if that actually succeeds. And that's it for Monday, August 11th, 1986. And we'll be back after we've watched the Tuesday episode. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Rosa, I'm not going to leave her alone.
No, it wouldn't be right, would it? And Inspector Castillo always does the right thing, no matter what people want.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 518 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, August 12th, 1986. Rosa tells Cruz that she can't forgive him. Santana tells Cruz she wants a divorce. Cruz tells her he'll take care of Brandon. And she says that if Cruz needn't have a baby, Brandon will become a burden. After a wild night, Gina tells Keith she's going to marry Cece. Keith has a hard time believing that that's going to happen. Gina goes to Cece and tries to get him to give her Brandon. Cece says that Brandon is moving in with him. So then Gina tries to remind him of their happy times together. That does not work on Cece. But she still doesn't tell him about the tape. I guess the time is not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's waiting for Kelly to be ready to stand trial, so it'll be more dire.
I think so.
Rosa is angry when Gina shows Brandon the newspaper with Santana's trial all over the front page. Brandon asks Eden why everyone wants to leave him. He's gotten a wind that he's been shuffled around between family members. Rosa finds out that Cece intends to keep Brandon and quits her job. She says, she says, I haven't said anything for 25 years, and this is the last straw, I guess. So.
And Cece does argue that Brandon, as you say, has been shuffled back and forth an awful lot and needs a steady home. And I think this is one of those actual fairly rare times when I think Cece is right about family matters, and I think he actually is seeing the situation a little more clearly than Rosa is.
It's kind of funny that he doesn't even let Cruz take him home. So it's like, the agreement means nothing. The legality of who's, Brandon belongs to means nothing to Cece. He's just made this decision.
Well, he does point out that Cruz will be working most of the time, and we have seen the demands of Cruz's job. That's one of the things that was leading to the strain between him and Santana even before Eden and Kirk's marriage broke up. So I do actually think he has a bit of a point there, especially with Santana in jail and possibly not getting out for a while, since she seems to be under the influence of something.
Mm-hmm. So really, that's the first piece. That's Gina. She needs to be into place if she wants to get Brandon and Cece back. The fact that they're now both living in the same house means she only just needs Cece to agree to take her back.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering what was going to happen with Rosa with Margarita Cordova out of the credits, and I thought, well, maybe she'll kind of get relegated to, recurring, when Brandon, most of the time Brandon hasn't been in the cast, he's just been on when needed. But with her actually quitting her job, I'm thinking that the actress might be gone. Cruz goes to Keith to admonish Gina for showing Brandon that newspaper. And he says he's going to bury them both. So, I think we glossed over this the last time, but someone asked Keith, I think it was Gina, exactly what he had, what was his beef with Cruz. He says, I'll tell you another time, or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I think the writers have now worked out what the big secret is, which I do remember. But I think we're going to at least need that reunion to happen before it comes out, if not more time.
I'm really hoping for that reunion to happen. I have no idea now just, who's going to be there even if Santana's still in prison. And I don't.
It was supposed to be next month,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now it's August already. So.
Exactly.
Nick visits Santana. It's a surprise. He says she was the first person to visit him when Kelly was sent away. That was, I don't think, depicted on screen. But I think the writers have tried to set up this non-existent relationship between Santana and Nick. And since they're both more or less going to be single soon, maybe this is an attempt at another potential pairing. She tells him to remind Brandon about her when she is in prison. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with Nick.
And it is kind of nice to see Santana in a sort of more calm relationship with someone, because especially with her taking all these pills, we've seen her have blow-ups with Keith, and certainly with Eden, and certainly with Cruz, and with her mother, and it's been a lot of drama with Santana, so it's kind of nice to see these two characters have a more quiet moment together.
It's interesting she hasn't quite exhibited the withdrawal that Keith was warning Gina was going to be happening soon, because I think it'll be very obvious to the doctors as soon as that happens that she was on something. But it may be out of her system by then, and they will have lost their chance. Although they did take her blood, I think, in the day they arrested her, so they probably will find out that she was on crack. Eden tells Cruz she's leaving town. Long story short, she left town.
Yeah, Cruz did try to stop her at one point.
I looked ahead to see how long Marcy Walker would be gone, considering she just had her vacation. And, let's just say she just had her vacation. Kelly tells Pearl it feels like she's woken up from a nightmare. So I guess she's more or less back to normal. I mean, she remembers Gina was there. She remembers Dylan. She remembers everything. So I think she might be fit to stand trial soon.
Yeah, she definitely seems to be getting better.
We will see if she has any romantic feelings for Pearl. But first, they need to break into Macintosh's property. And when they get inside, they find a huge room filled with files. But before they can look through them, the door closes, and Pearl realizes they're not in a file room after all. They are in a vault. Did that door close on purpose, or was it on a timer? Is there another person that locked them in on purpose? I guess we're going to find out pretty soon. I guess if it was on a timer and they're locked in all night, that will be the chance for them to get closer romantically as they are locked in all night. That beats a cave-in.
Feeling less and less likelihood of romantic vibes as Kelly gets better and better. But the vault may prove me wrong.
Well, we will see. We'll see if we see Macintosh in the next episode, or if they manage to stretch things out for another episode by having them locked in the vault all night. All right, that's it for our Tuesday episode. We'll be back after we've seen episode 519. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to episode 519 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We watched Santa Barbara 519, which aired Wednesday, August 13th, 1986. We saw Dr. Renfro on Falconcrest the other day. And speaking of evil doctors, Dr. Priscilla McIntosh finds Kelly and Pearl in her office. She says she can't tell them anything about Brian Bradford, except that she thinks about him every day. Then Dr. Rawlings arrives. I guess he figured they were headed there, so I guess he knew where his wife lived. Kelly tells him that she doesn't need him anymore, but he says, your best option is to say that you're already insane before you push Dylan, so you need me for that. Rawlings then threatens to kill Pearl and Kelly. It's kind of interesting, because it's really Pearl who is implying that he's going to kill them, but he does nothing to disabuse them of that theory, so it's somewhat borderline. Don't know how bad Rawlings really is.
Well, I'm assuming he's very bad at this point. But yeah, he's threatening to basically make it impossible for Kelly to plead insanity if she doesn't play along with him. But then there is the implicit threat that he might actually just kill them. So, yeah.
While waiting for their fate, Pearl says to Kelly, "Remember the other day when we said that even though we're just friends, we can love each other? I feel..." And just then, Dr. McIntosh comes in and helps them escape. So I think, yes, I think we were both right on Pearl's growing feelings for Kelly. Poor Courtney, sitting at home, knowing full well Pearl was interested in her cousin because she saw that coming a mile away, like we did. But I don't think Kelly's going to return those feelings. So this may lead to them splitting up geographically in the very near future. Dr. McIntosh helps them escape, and as they run off, they hear her screaming as Dr. Rawlings arrives. Now, I was wondering if this was actually part of his plan. Maybe he told her, "Oh, pretend you're helping them escape so that they won't be here." You know, I don't know.
That's what I thought too. I thought perhaps it was a fake out. She did seem genuinely afraid of Dr. Rawlings, though. So
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
If we never see her again, something bad may have befallen her. But if we do ever see her again, that means that Kelly and Pearl are looping around and coming back. So I don't know where they would go. They don't really have any other. I mean, it seemed kind of dumb that the Pearl basically spent 3 months trying to get into Dr. Rawlings' file room at the Institute, but here he is locked in the file room all night with Kelly, and they don't indicate that they spent time going through her files at all. And there's like a big filing cabinet that says 1975, 1976. Like, they really should have searched that. Don't you think that would be their number one priority?
I would think so. And also, you know, I feel like we need to know more about what Brian's relationship was with McIntosh, because I don't think it's genuinely, you know, a commonplace thing for someone who is just treating a patient to think of them every day. Like, it seemed like they had a deeper relationship.
Do you think maybe they had an affair and that's why Rawlings...
I'm wondering about that.
Maybe Rawlings did away with Brian?
Maybe.
Made it look like a suicide? But it's kind of weird that she wouldn't want to talk about it then. You know. Unless she already knew at that point Rawlings was in the house. And that, you know, he had already talked to her. Santana is starting to finally suffer from withdrawal symptoms. She asks for some more allergy pills, but Rosa says they're all out. So I think the doctors, I don't know what's taking them so long with that blood they took from her a few days ago, but they should realize it's full of crack by now. Sophia tells Rosa that Cece and her can provide a very stable environment for Brandon. And Cece then arrives with a paper for Santana to sign giving him custody. And he said, "You told me you would never try to take custody away from me." And this, of course, is Cece Capwell's standard thing. He'll just promise anything but do what he wants. The surprising thing is Rosa ends up talking Santana into signing it, because I think she can see in Santana's current state she can't, take care of Brandon. And she's angry with Cruz. And, of course, as Cece pointed out today or yesterday, Brandon doesn't see you and Ruben as his grandparents because he doesn't know Santana's his mother. And I was thinking at the time, Rosa should just tell Brandon.
Well, if we remember, though, back to the early episodes of this series when Santana was first looking for Brandon, or for evidence that he was hers, Rosa was not supportive of her at all. And in fact, actually kind of tattled on her a little bit to Cece when she was getting close. So I think for Rosa to pull out the grandparent card right now is a little bit inconsistent, at least.
I feel like this is what I felt originally, that everything Rosa does is because of her loyalty to Cece as his employee, and even now that she's quit, I guess maybe that won't happen as much. But that seems to be what I feel was her driving force behind all the things that seem to be counterintuitive for her family.
But I think at this point, there really isn't any doubt that Santana's not in a position to take care of him.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, with Rosa on the outs with Cruz, sending Brandon back to CC is really the only other option.
Although I feel if Rosa is currently unemployed, she'd be in a perfect situation to take care of Brandon herself.
Mm-hmm.
Santana signs the paper and says, "I hate you, Mama. I hate you the most. I'll never forget it." So now Santana hates everyone except Nick, maybe. Nick and Cruz discuss Santana. Then Nick visits Santana and he tries to convince her that she needs Cruz. He's trying to play mend things between Cruz and Santana.
Mm-hmm.
What's Cruz doing this whole time? Well, Cruz finds Eden at the beach house and not out of town after all. And they spend the day at the beach, and magically a horse appears at one point.
Mm-hmm. And of course their theme music, which
Yeah.
always appears.
They spend the whole episode together, basically, while Nick is trying to say, "Oh yeah, you and Cruz could easily get back together."
And I think it was interesting, though, as we're watching this, so we'd be kind of wondering why Nick was still around, because Kelly, of course, has been in a mental institution and off on her adventures with Pearl. But we had sort of wondered if that would be a possible pairing some way down the road with Nick and Santana, since he's sort of the only one who's really sympathetic to her at this point.
Well, the thing is, Santana will come to her senses pretty soon after she's, the withdrawals are gone and they realize it was crack, and that the important part of the storyline is for her to sign custody over to Cece, which has already happened. Mm-hmm. So really, she could regain her senses as quickly as Kelly did in the last couple of days, and get out of the hospital, perhaps get out of the jail term by saying that someone drugged her, and then go back to her normal life. But now she doesn't have Brandon or Cruz.
Mm-hmm. So having something with Nick might
not be too far down the road.
Yeah. And it's interesting that in the context of this show, we're kind of treating this as maybe a big deal, but we watch Days of Our Lives and they play musical chairs with the romances every few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Chloe is working her way through all the Kiriakises.
Yeah, exactly.
Ones she doesn't even know about yet. So I don't remember, what I remember about this summer of 86 is I remembered Ted working at a radio station and, Jane being Roxanne. And then I remember a little bit about what's going on with Mason, which we'll find out soon, what he's been up to. But yeah, I don't remember anything about how this storyline progresses. I don't even remember the reunion because, I was only listening to it on audio. And I certainly don't remember the Augusta storyline that has suddenly occurred. Lionel has returned from his trip, but Augusta fails to meet him at the Orient Express, where they agreed to meet 3 hours ago. And he and Julia discover that Augusta returned yesterday, saw a number of people, including Cece, but didn't contact either of them. A phone call reveals that Augusta has been kidnapped, and the kidnappers want $2 million. Lionel tries to tell him he doesn't have that much money. They decide they can get $1 million from Augusta's accounts with Julia's power of attorney. And at that point he says, I wish I'd gotten Augusta to screw Cece out of more money at the time. Lionel tries to call on all the people who owe him money, and apparently there are a lot of them, and some of them owe him a lot. And no one comes through. So this is sad for Lionel. All of his so-called friends can't come through when he needs them. But of course they can't, as usually with these kidnappings. They can't tell the police or anyone else what's going on. Although I think the kidnappers wouldn't mind if they told other people to try and get the money. Julia says, well, I'm going to go to Cece. And Lionel forbids her to do that. But then at the end of the episode, he shows up at Cece's door begging for a favor.
I have to say I was a little disappointed because I was hoping for a little bit of comedic payoff on Augusta and Lionel ending up on the wrong trip.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, thrown us off from what we were expecting, and then knowing that Louis Sorel is no longer on contract and is about to show up on One Life to Live, it's very difficult to figure out what's, what they're planning. Did they change their mind about this? Are we going to get this funny reunion? Like, how did she get kidnapped? That might be part of the funny story too. Is it Augusta and Julia's parents just trying to fleece Lionel because they were kind of con artists? So, yeah, I really don't know. I have no memory of this. The only thing the only wild thought I had is it somehow tied in with the Mason story? But if so, we'll find out soon, I think. But yeah, I'm a bit worried about how they're going to have Augusta leave the canvas, because if Louise Sorel is off the show, maybe she will be killed by the kidnappers when Lionel can't come up with the money.
Maybe, or I mean, I sort of am suspecting a bit of a scam there too, perhaps. So
It may not be a straightforward kidnapping.
yeah, and I don't know how long her contract is with the other soap opera. One thing we see a lot of in modern times is we'll see the same actor pop up on different soap operas during their hiatus. So I don't know how long she'll be away. But I was disappointed because a few weeks ago even, I would have really loved to have had just some sort of a brief reaction to Lionel being trapped on a boat with his in-laws and, Augusta being sort of flown up the Himalayas with no Lionel in sight.
The only reference we got to it was Lionel said, she's back from Tibet or whatever it was, and I think he mentions that couple that she was stuck with. So clearly she had that whole month there as was planned, for Lionel anyway. But yeah, no hint of the wackiness which we were all expecting. Well, I guess we'll find out. Maybe we'll find out who has Augusta tomorrow when we watch episode 520 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 520 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, August 14th, 1986. So we're in the last stretch of summer. Mm-hmm. We're in the middle of sweeps. And hopefully Ted won't have 8 months of nothing to do in between the summertime fun time. Cruz tells Eden he feels they're already married and he just needs to get things settled for Brandon and Santana. And I believe this prompts her to try to leave town again, but she does stick around for the episode. Gina has curly hair. I think this is a new hairdo. She tells Keith that Brandon being with Cece is perfect, as all she needs now is to land Cece. But Kelly needs to come back for that plan to work. Keith says, I'm still in the dark on that. And she grabs his hand and says, I do my best work in the dark. Keith gives Gina some drugs. Gina hides them in Santana's jewelry box. Later, Cruz comes home to find Keith searching the beach house, and a uniformed officer finds the drugs, and Cruz once again punches Keith.
And it's kind of interesting when you think about how just a few weeks ago Keith was pledging his undying love to Santana, and how completely thoroughly he has thrown her under the bus since then.
I think the Keith-Gina pairing is gold, so I think the writers realized that's the pair to put together.
They definitely have more chemistry, I feel, than Keith and Santana did.
Interestingly, both Keith and Gina don't wear gloves when when handling the plastic bag of pills. So, you would think that would be weird if they found their fingerprints on it, but not Santana's.
I feel like maybe in Keith's case, he's feeling a little bit untouchable because of his position, and maybe, we know Gina is very sort of impulsive anyway, but maybe a bit of that is rubbed off on her as well.
He hasn't been too worried that Assistant District Attorney Mason Capwell appears to be missing for 2 weeks. Rosa seems happy that Brandon is with Cece, because at least that will ensure Gina can't go near him, and Gina just smirks. Then the doctor and Keith report that Santana's blood reveals a heavy concentration of methylphenidrate. I don't know if that's a real thing. And that she's clearly been an addict for some time. Rosa confronts Santana, who is annoyed that Rosa believes these lies. Then Keith questions her, but Santana has a couple of flashbacks of both Gina and Keith handing her pills, and she realizes that they're the ones who set her up. Cruz arrives and immediately starts accusing her, which causes her not to tell him that she's figured out that Santana and Keith are behind it all, and she just tells him to get lost and go be with Eden. So I was thinking this whole thing would have been immediately solved if she told Cruz that, because he immediately would have realized that it must be true.
And she says something in this exchange about how she's going to have to fight her own battles from now on. So it doesn't sound like she's really going to trust anyone, although hopefully she might warm up to Nick. That's a possible ally for her.
I think maybe, if she tells Nick tomorrow her thoughts that it was Gina and Keith, don't see why he wouldn't go right to Cruz unless she says, but don't tell Cruz. I want to keep him out of this. So Nick will be doing his private investigating of Gina and Keith, perhaps, which could be more fun than an official police investigation anyway. Eden says, those drugs explain Santana's weird behavior, but Cruz is angry with himself for not suspecting it long ago. Then they go back to the beach. Ted yawns on the air, and Jane accuses him of not being professional because he's rich and the job just fell into his lap, and hundreds of people would happily have his job. Next thing you know, Ted decides to show his loyalty to the job by breaking a Guinness World Record by having a marathon on-air session, which Haley is very excited about. Jane puts a bit of water on that by saying it's not up to him to say he's going to be on the air for however long it is. And he says, well, bring it up to the station management, and if even one of them doesn't agree, then I won't do it. I think he says something else too. But Chad Anderson walks into the station, and he knows Jane, and he tells her he's moving to Maui in 2 weeks. But he wouldn't mind spending the next 2 weeks partying with Roxanne. He, of course, realizes that this is a secret from her coworkers and doesn't spill anything, but realizes that perhaps Ted might want to know that Roxanne and Jane are one and the same because he has heard her doing her Roxanne shtick with Ted on the radio. And he sees a flyer advertising an upcoming beach party and wants to party with her as Roxanne, but she says to find someone else. Later, Ted and Jane have lunch at the Orient Express and talk about Haley, and Ted defends her and says that she's much stronger than Jane thinks she is because she lost both her parents, came across the country on her own. The marathon gets approved, and Ted wants Haley there to support him, but Haley says, no, I'm going to a beach party with this guy Chad I met. So Ted asks Jane to stay with him, and he says, you can give me 20 lashes if I start to yawn. And Jane gets a smile on her face.
Now, Chad doesn't seem like the best, I have to say. He's got some pretty strange vibes, so I have a feeling that Haley might need to be rescued at some point during the sweeps.
He seems to be a certain type, but I don't know. We will see. And we will see if Chad is going to be the downfall of Roxanne. Lionel tells Cece and Sophia that Augusta has been kidnapped and he needs $1 million more. Cece thinks it's a scheme to get the Lockridge money back, but Sophia says, if you don't give Lionel the money, I will. So Cece shows up at the Orient Express at the bar where Lionel's been hanging out and plunks down the money and tells them at least have some private security when you pay off the kidnappers. The kidnappers call and let Lionel talk to Augusta, and we hear Louise Sorel. in voice only. Wonder if she's already moved to New York to be on One Life to Live. The kidnappers will call again with the drop-off point.
And we do get a nice little throwback in a way when Sophia and Cece are arguing, because Sophia really wants Cece to help Lionel out. And she points out to him that Lionel would not be in this position of having to beg for money if Cece hadn't taken everything from him.
Mm-hmm.
And Cece actually says something like, "Oh, this is exactly what Eden told me."
Mm-hmm.
And so things are sort of coming full circle a bit. And I think every time he has these discussions, he starts to realize more and more that he's made a bit of a mistake.
Mm-hmm. I really don't remember this kidnapping storyline at all, so I, wonder what will go awry. Will the money be gone? Will Augusta be gone? Will they both be gone? How will Lionel pay Cece back $1 million? Either way, if it goes awry, and is it actually a scheme by one of our cast members to trick Lionel or Cece out of the money?
Mm-hmm.
I really don't recall. Nothing comes to me. So, I'll be excited to see. Maybe this gets resolved very quickly, and that's why it doesn't register in my memory very much, because maybe it was an over and done with thing in 2 days. But we will find out. We've got a Friday episode tomorrow. We will see if we hear Augusta again, if Kelly and Pearl make it either back to Macintosh or back to Santa Barbara. And we will see how Ted's marathon radio session goes. And will it be on at the same time as the beach party? Maybe they'll be playing the radio with Ted on the air at the beach party. Or he can do it live on location from the beach party. That would actually be more exciting. I think that's probably what's going to happen now that I think about it. All right, we'll be back after we watch episode 521 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We have finished episode 521 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, August 15th, 1986. Cece tells Eden that Santana has escaped from the hospital. Gina and Keith are in bed when Keith gets the news, and he says that thanks to her, he's a target too. Keith leaves Gina's place, and there is a knock at the door. Gina is worried Santana has come to kill her. But it's Kelly and Pearl.
Wow.
That was a nice
they
little...
made it up from Mexico really quickly.
Mm-hmm, with no passports.
Impressive.
Yeah. Gina is excited to see Kelly and to hear that she has gotten better, and urges her to stand trial because she knows she's going to get off easily. But Pearl seems very suspicious of this, and Kelly keeps asking, did you see a gun, or did you see who took the gun? But Gina says, no, I don't know anything about a gun. So I think she's really holding onto this to the last second.
She's playing the long game for maximum leverage.
I think she wants Kelly to be on the stand and about to be, lose all hope before she shows up with that tape and the gun for Cece.
And it's funny because Cece and Sophia are kind of discussing this later and saying, well, Gina wouldn't withhold this if she knew it. She wouldn't be that terrible.
Mm-hmm. Kelly actually.
Yes, she would.
Kelly says, Gina wouldn't send me to jail. Kelly tells Cece that she remembers most of what happened, including that Dylan had a gun, and Cece promises no more hospitals for Kelly. Pearl says that he and Kelly are sure that Gina knows more than she's telling. They've discussed it in between scenes. Kelly tells Nick that she doesn't feel the same way about him anymore. Pearl seems to pity Nick, but also seems happy because now he can swoop in.
Yeah, but I really feel that Pearl should be seeing this conversation with Nick as foreshadowing to any conversation Kelly has with him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, I guess, hope springs eternal. Nick sort of hanging on like this, but by my count, Kelly's had this same conversation with him at least 3 times. So.
Well, I think Pearl was just about to start the "we should probably date now" conversation when there is a ring at the doorbell, and 2 detectives arrive to arrest Kelly Capwell for murdering Dylan Hartley. Luckily they are able to keep the detectives busy. Cece sends the butler, Pearl, to prepare some food for the detectives, and Cece gets on the phone. Meanwhile, tells Eden to pack a bag for Kelly and get her passport. And Sophia says that Kelly can stay at the Armonte Villa. So, no more hospitals for Kelly. Instead, she's going to be spirited out of town.
And the assumption is that in real life, this is when Robin Wright will film The Princess Bride.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see how much longer Kelly will be on the screen. And presumably, if Robin Wright is not on the show, we will not be seeing Kelly's adventures at the villa. She will just be gone for some number of weeks, presumably. Maybe we'll see a one-sided conversation with Pearl, or maybe she'll quickly dump him before she leaves town, leaving Pearl to try to explain to Courtney why he's been after her cousin this last few weeks. And then also, how will this affect Gina's plan? Because she's waited for Kelly to come back this whole time. If Kelly's in Europe, then maybe Gina will just keep that bus locker key safe and just wait a little longer for Kelly to come back. Although if Cece and Sophia get married, that might spur Gina to speed up her plan a little bit.
Yeah, or it'll just be another roadblock that Gina will have to work her way around. I mean, it is impressive how far she's actually gotten in that she's managed to wrench the custody of Brandon away from Santana in a very effective and I think thorough way. So, even that is quite an achievement, I think.
Mm-hmm. Santana steals Cruz's gun. He's in the next room on the phone. She sneaks into the house, steals the gun, and leaves. Nick shows up, unhappy with Cruz over how he's been handling Santana, and Cruz notices his gun is missing. Santana arrives at Gina's and holds her at gunpoint. Nick shows up at the door, but Santana says, "If you say anything, I will shoot you." So Nick leaves without realizing Gina was there.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting because last episode we saw Santana starting to come down from all of the drugs. And I, not being an expert in addictions, would have assumed that would have made her a bit more stable. But she actually seems to be even less stable now than she was.
They show her very sweaty throughout this whole episode, on the verge of doubling over much of the time. And Gina seems to fumble for something on the desk. I don't know if she was looking for a letter opener or something, but as far as I can tell, she ends up just gathering up some papers that are on her desk and flinging them at Santana. Santana fires the gun into the ceiling, and Gina manages to get out the front door. Gina rushes over to Keith's to tell her what's going on, and Keith says, "Well, you let her right here. We better kind of get out of here." They jump into the car, and Santana's in the back seat with the gun. And seconds later, they're being ushered back into Keith's apartment, where Santana is holding them hostage. I don't know what prompts Keith to turn on the radio, but Cruz Castillo has asked Ted if he can make a plea to Santana, and he's asked Santana to give herself up. Santana smashes the radio, and Gina takes the opportunity to try and maybe rush Santana, but Santana ends up dropping the gun. I don't know if that was on purpose, because it seems like the other 2 actors were waiting for her to recover her gun. But Santana ends up grabbing the gun again and rushing out the door. Ted is on the air at the beach bar where the beach party is happening. Chad tells Jane he's just waiting for the right time to tell Ted that she's Roxanne. Haley wonders why Chad is picking on Jane, and he says that he went out with her a few times and that she's one of the worst teases he knows, which extremely shocks Haley, saying you must be talking about a different person.
No.
So I don't think Haley has put it together. She seemed quite clueless. Cece and Sophia pop by the party to give some support to Ted. Gina and Keith arrive too, Keith's thought being that there is safety in numbers. Cece asks Gina if she knows anything about the night Dylan died, and he grabs her pearls and twists them around her neck, saying, if you're holding anything back, you'll pay a dear price for it. I'll do anything, which, unbeknownst to Cece, is exactly what Gina wants to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Gina says, I know that. And then Santana bursts in with a gun. Everyone scatters, and she waves it around, saying, stay where you are, all of you. Could Santana be the next Peter Flint on this show?
Well, she's definitely ruining any chance she has of getting Brandon back, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think even when if she totally comes down off her drug-induced and withdrawal-induced things, I don't think Cece's going to want to give the child back to her.
No, well, especially if she's, facing a whole bunch of criminal charges related to this. She could have perhaps plausibly said that this was a one-time only thing when it was just the car accident, but she's gone way past that now.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if Santana will be able to avoid jail sometime if they can prove she was drugged. But I mean, with the planted pills, I don't know. But then again, maybe Keith will try to intervene to keep her out of jail.
Yeah, I just feel like, with the way she's behaving now, which is really completely off the rails, even if she does it truthfully, as we know, try to make the case that she was framed, who is going to believe her?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Nick might.
Nick might.
That is it for the episode. So we'll see Monday if Kelly says, wait for me, Pearl. Hey, we had some cast credits again as the NBC announcer advertised Miami Vice. Last time we had credits was episode 516, and guess who's back in the credits? Rosa Andrade and Augusta Lockridge.
Oh my goodness.
So I don't know if they were supposed to have been in the lower credits, with the non-contract players, and the person who put them in just messed up. Because we did hear Augusta's voice once, and of course Rosa is still around, just not working for the Capwells.
She's actually, Rosa especially, is actually more present in these last few episodes than she's been in some where she's been fully part of the credits.
Mm-hmm.
So, the other thing I wondered, though, with that is sometimes it's not always clear whether the credits we're watching actually go with the episode.
Well, that's what I thought, except that Chad is played by David Oliver in the credits, and he only appears in 2 episodes. This is his final episode.
Oh, I had great plans for Chad.
So I imagine Haley coming back from the volleyball game that they went off to play and saying, oh, Chad just told me you're Roxanne, because he's not going to be back. So that's weird. Unless there's a recast of Chad that I'm not aware of, and I've only noted people in my little cast list that appear in 2 or more episodes. So if there is another Chad who appears in 1 episode, that might have gotten past me. But
we have noticed at least once in the past, though, where someone who was not listed in IMDb as being in a particular episode actually was. So.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So maybe Chad will be in 1 more episode. Or 1 more scene. Chad is played by David Oliver, who I remember as Perry Hutchins on Another World. But I think Perry was blonder, and I don't think I recognized him in this, because he's got quite dark hair in this episode. So that is it for week 107 of Santa Barbara. We'll be back for the last half of August with episode 522 as we start week 108. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Maybe what we felt for each other was what got Dylan killed, and I lost my mind. And I don't think I can bear to go back to those feelings that I had for anything or anyone.
Even the way you felt about me.
Maybe it hurts me inside. You know, and you know how I don't like change or for things to end. But it just isn't there anymore. And I can't create it again.
Kelly will have to stand trial. That'll probably give Cece another stroke. Well, he'll do anything to avoid that from happening.
I'm still in the dark.
And that's just where I want you to stay. In fact, I have a nice dark place I'd like to take you. I do my best work in the dark. Did I ever tell you that?